Let's talk all about AI in business. It's hosted by Brent Muller. Welcome to the Future Proof Podcast.
Hi, and welcome to Future Proof, the podcast where we're decoding how founders, leaders, and execs are reshaping the landscape of business using AI data and automation. And if you want to future-proof your business, you're definitely in the right place. And I'm welcomed today by Jeff Lerner from Misnomer Marketing. Jeff, so glad to have you.
So good to be here.
Awesome. Well, let's jump. Well, before we do, as anybody that's watching the podcast, if you need to have a quick conversation with us about anything, you need to be connected with someone from the podcast, or you want to just talk to us about how AI fits in, there's a link in the show notes. Book 15 minutes with me. We are here. No pitch. We're here to help. Anyway, let's jump into our episode today. Jeff, as we always do, let's start with your background. Tell us a little bit, because you've journeyed from big corporate and bureaucracy all the way to startups. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's right. So, I've been in the marketing and brand space for 25 years. Started my career in the early days of Google back in 2004 when Gmail didn't exist. YouTube was not yet a thing. So it was very much the early days of Google.
And people don't even remember that. That's crazy.
No.
Yeah.
No,
Google is not that old.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was a very, inspiring time for sure to see such rapid growth and development and turn from just core Google into, Google plus Gmail plus YouTube plus display ads and all the different things. And it became a suite of marketing products, which was amazing.
Yeah.
And so I did that for, almost 8 years. And I wanted to kind of spread my wings a little bit, get a taste of what marketing outside of those walls was like. And so I joined an agency to lead the strategy for their clients. Realized I hate the agency model only because it's, kind of this, you win a client, then you go and you hire for someone to then service that client. So you're basically bringing in junior level people in a lot of cases, and they're learning on the customer's dime. And if I were
margins are terrible, results are hard to get because of that. So many things wrong with that model.
They sell you in with the A team, but very quickly delegate it to a different group or of people. And so it was a great learning experience for me to see and understand how agencies work. And then after that, I wanted to kind of now get big corporate world marketing experience. And so I got recruited to lead the marketing and branding at Cricket Wireless, which I did for a couple of years until Cricket was acquired by AT&T, in which case I then stayed on and worked with AT&T for a while until they asked me to relocate. Didn't want to do it. I was living in San Diego, perfectly happy here.
How could you not? You have the perfect weather all year round.
Exactly. And so since then, I've been working primarily with startups and small businesses, and have really come to both appreciate the challenges and the very steep hill that many of them often climb. But at the same time, the excitement, the flexibility, and just the kind of roll up your sleeves, get stuff done mindset that goes with startups. And
it's
so
fun and frustrating at the same time, right?
100%. There's a real, for me at least, a real joy in knowing when I wake up every day that my day, I have no idea because in a startup world, you can plan for the day, but the reality is it's going to end up being much different. And so for the last, 7-8 years have been focused as a CMO, fractional CMO in the startup space, working with brands and organizations on their go-to-market strategy, their differentiation, their personas and ICP development. But most importantly, how do these startups scale and in fact build a demand gen engine that drives not just the growth in terms of customers and revenue, but in a lot of cases, fundraising as well.
Yeah, totally get that. And the demand gen engine that you see most, right? Are most of your clients B2B, they B2C? Do they run the gamut?
Yeah, I've worked with a variety of clients. Typically, there's a lot of B2B, a lot of SaaS tech, kind of companies, whether it's health tech or fintech or, something else. You just throw tech at the end of it and you now have a new category.
Yeah.
But, and so what is often overlooked is even though it's B2B, it's still person to person, right? It's still
always,
you got to connect with the individual who's going to make the decision, who's at least maybe will be your champion within an organization. And it's about finding ways to make that emotional connection with that person so they internally say, you know what, here's a good idea, here's an opportunity. Let me now share that internally with the team and hopefully bring that organization, that software, that technology on board.
Yeah, totally get it. Totally get it. And so, as you navigate these clients that you work with, right? These startups, what do you see their biggest? Because again, when you're wearing all kinds of hats, right? So the fundraising is a whole nother animal, right? Which you've done phenomenally well. What, over 425 million? Did I? Yeah,
425 million. Yep.
yeah, yeah. That's not chump change. So that's phenomenal results. But tell me a little bit about the challenges that startups face. Is it headcount? Is it funding? Is it all of the above?
I mean, every startup is different. So I've seen it all in the sense of it could be they have the wrong people in the wrong roles. They don't have enough people in the roles that they need. But one fundamental truth that seems to be consistent across so many of the startups that I work with is that they have a great product, a great idea, a great service, but they have no idea how to actually tell people about it. What I mean by that is not just the ability to speak it and share like, oh, this is what our technology does. It's often, in a lot of cases, these are product-led organizations or even engineering-led organizations where they can tell you the technical how and why something may exist. You ask this same group, like if you were pitching your, this solution to a room full of people, how would you do it? And they would immediately dive into the product features
And the tech.
Whereas they don't know how to completely
Yeah.
turn it around and say, okay, who are we bringing this to? What problem are we solving for them? How are we going to tell them about it in a way that makes them think, oh, you know what, I do have that issue. How can this solve that,
Right.
But also how to do it in a way that it's differentiated from any other product claiming to do the same thing.
Right.
And so that's where I come in and work with these organizations where the tech is great, the solution is great, but they've hit a wall. They're like, why are we not growing? Well, you're not growing because you don't know how to tell the story of the purpose and value that what you do can bring someone. That's the connection point that's missing.
And it's so funny you said that because I have had startups on the podcast. I've worked with a bunch myself, and that is the same theme. And a matter of fact, I said this to my partner who he's a very engineering guy, and he leans the same way. And I'm like, no one cares, right?
Yep.
At the end of the day, like that's important to you because you built it. It's always about what's in it for them, right? And I love that you said that. Matter of fact, I was telling you about a podcast guest I had recently who said the same thing. He runs a consulting company, and he told his sales guy, no one cares about us, right? You have to tell them what is in it for them and why this matters to them, right? The outcome. So what you're saying, Jeff, is spot on. I feel like that there should be more training out there. I think we've got to get you in front of like Dan Martell's group, and because I know that they preach that, but there's so many that SaaS companies that just companies in general that they build something and it's always about the how and the tech and it's never about the outcome for their customers. So kudos that you're helping them. So how difficult is that conversation with the leadership team sometimes?
It could be so challenging to check egos at a door, right? And say, hey, look, let's all assume and agree that we have a great product. We have a great solution. Like we're not here to debate that. That would be a whole separate conversation. What we're here to do now is talk about what that strategy looks like to tell people about it and not tell your friends, Mr. Engineer, what, the code that you wrote or whatever. That's great for your resume and for what you want to do in your career. But if we want to make the company successful, we need to talk about, hey, who is the target audience? What does that profile look like? And most importantly, what are the pain points that person has that our solution will help solve for? Now we can put those two things together and say, well, if we know that X is our target and this is the challenge they have, our messaging is all about how our solution can help alleviate a problem that these individuals have. And if we can alleviate that problem for them, even in the B2B or B2C world, by alleviating that problem, the positive impact that will have either on their life, if it's B2C, or on their day-to-day, their business life,
Right.
on the B2B world.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. And so you've done a ton of fundraising, right? And so when they get their initial round of funding or their Series A or their Series B, when they start to allocate that money, right? Where typically do you see the initial push? Is it with demand gen and growing, right? And have you seen it to where they go out before they've done all that messaging that you've talked about?
Yeah. So, I've been brought into organizations that have been both like, seed, very early stage, just
Right.
trying to figure out, even the smallest glimpse into what their go-to-market strategy looks like and where they're going to play in a crowded market. And in which case, what I'm there to do is try and build the foundation for the brand and create a foundation for when there is a little bit more budget to then start thinking about how do we advertise? How do we sponsor, a trade show or some of the bigger swings that you take when you have a little bit more money because you've done at least a decent sized round. When I've joined like a Series A or Series B organization, typically they are a little bit further down the line in terms of their growth. They have presumably at least a little bit better understanding of who they are, their audience, and some of those, kind of key components of a brand. Now, there's usually some refinement that comes in with it, but now it's really taking the concept of, okay, we have this basic foundation. Now, how are we going to really go and start pushing to generate the revenue growth that we need? And this is where the conversations get interesting with founders and CEOs, because they're, of course, in a lot of ways like, well, why don't I just go hire 5 or 10 more sales reps? And the answer is, well, that could be the solution.
Might be cart before the horse, though.
But also like, well, what if we just invested a little bit more into the marketing side so we can build a pipeline, so we can see how we can best convert and drive demand before you go and start hiring more
High-priced salespeople. Yeah.
Right. Because ultimately, and I tell them that I think that a website should be the number one sales rep in a company. Now, it may not close every deal, right, depending on the size and scope.
Yeah.
But at the very least, it should be pushing to that next conversation, getting someone on the phone with a closer. And so if we haven't figured out the messaging and the strategy to do all that on the website, there's no point in hiring 5, 10, 15 more sales reps who are all going to be competing against each other for maybe that 1 or 2 warm leads that come in. And that's not ideal either.
Yeah. And so in your experience, because you know that demand gen, it's more crowded than ever. It's the different channels are throttling more than ever. Is your where do you see the best bang for qualified leads coming?
Yeah, I mean,
I know that's a loaded question, Jeff. I totally know that.
It depends on the startup and it depends on the solution. LinkedIn is a great place if you know that you're looking for a chief procurement officer at a company that sells fertilizer in the Midwest, right? That's where you're going to go and you're going to find that person and you're going to have that targeted one-to-one conversation, even if it's automated with the use of AI and other things. Yeah. And so that's definitely a path to find like the actual title of the human being. Having said that, there are few things more impactful than being at a conference, meeting people, sponsoring an event, having, a presence where you can showcase the solution, the benefits, and actually look people in the eye, shake some hands, and have a conversation about their pain points and the solution that you can offer. I would always rather do those 2 things before I start spending money on Google ads or social media ads or anything else like that, which are more passive in, their approach. I want to hit the more direct things earlier on because that's also going to be a little bit less expensive in some cases, but it will give you so much more information to then push you in the right direction moving forward.
Amen. Love that. Yeah. And when you can go to a conference and bring a bunch of, hot leads back, your sales teams are usually incredibly grateful. And happy to have those conversations because they're just way more on point. But yeah, I couldn't agree more. And, and Obviously, you kind of hit on something, you touched on it slightly, but product market fit is always a big challenge, right? And so how do you navigate that with the leadership team who they grow very impatient, right? I've been around enough of them to know,
Yeah.
and they don't always know that. They just think they build a great product, so they think that, everybody wants it.
Yeah, I am very direct as a person, in terms of how I run my business. It's probably the New Yorker in me.
Love
So
it.
when I sit in a room and I start, even just at the very first conversation with a founder, I'm very direct in saying one of the first things I'm going to be doing is an analysis of your current strategies. I do, and I complete with my own kind of brand analysis,
Yep.
including, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, competitive
Mhm.
analysis. I do all of this kind of pre-work to help inform what that roadmap looks like. And I will tell them, look, based on everything I have learned and discovered in my process, I think these are the places we should start. And here's how long it will realistically take until we reach X, Y, and Z KPI. If you are
Yep.
going to talk to someone else, and I suggest everyone does, go talk to someone else. See, I may not be the fit you need or whatever it may be. Talk to someone else. And if they're willing to just say they don't need to do all that work, but they're still going to, hit whatever KPI in a much shorter amount of time, that's great. Again, I would be asking a lot of follow-up questions of, well, how do you plan on doing it if you don't know all this information up front?
Amen.
Building out a strategy, just like experimenting with a recipe, right? Like it takes time to develop a recipe that works, that a world-class chef would say, this is it. Like if you add just a sprinkle too much of X, or a dash of Y, it's not going to be what you wanted. It's the same thing on a go-to-market strategy for a brand and ensuring that there's product market fit. You have to be really specific and strategic in understanding who you are and what you're all about.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Could not agree more. So that leads me to the next part, which always is, how is emerging tech like AI and automation and data playing in and reshaping kind of how you navigate these waters, right? Because I would imagine in certain industries, like we talk about before, right? If you're a SaaS company, you're thinking, I can't roll a product out that doesn't have AI, even if you're not, like you say, even if we're not using it. It's everybody wants it to be part of their product because they don't think it'll sell without it. And there's a big difference between a feature of AI and an AI driven product. And we don't even have to get into that, but how are you seeing this, the emerging tech influencing and changing the landscape?
I think the biggest challenge from my perspective is AI has become a buzzword that every organization is leaning into. And thus it makes it so that those that are doing things that are unique and remarkable get kind of completely washed away with the masses.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, even 5-10 years ago, that word was technology, right? And I shared my sentiments about this, about how, one of the baby wipe companies, would put out like, we have safe flush technology for our flushable wipes.
Right.
And like, when you say that, you think like the wipe has like microchips in it, whatever it is. Like, it obviously doesn't, but that's what your mind is going to. But because they felt they had to double down on this technology lingo.
Yeah, you're right.
Every company was doing it. Same thing. Then it went from technology to algorithms.
Right.
Everybody had an algorithm. It's amazing. Now, if you ask most people what's an algorithm, they have no idea. But still, everyone had to have an algorithm. Now it's moved into that world of AI, where any company out there, whether they're using ChatGPT to write a website copy or they actually have built a meaningful AI solution, they're using that phrase and that terminology, which just means that those that are doing something different and better are going to have a harder time standing out amongst the noise because everyone else is almost trying to stake claim to that lingo.
Yeah.
So I've seen some amazing AI tech, and it will, in fact, shape the future of so many different industries. But the days of leading with, we are changing healthcare with AI, whatever, great. So are 37 other companies that launched yesterday.
Right. Yes. I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. And so on the marketing side, I would imagine that data and automation, though, are a massive help, right, for you. Do you see that as well?
Without a doubt. The ability to not just identify opportunities on the marketing front, but to use AI and machine learning to help take a big chunk of data from our from my company's customers and their customers and put them through a tool that spits out really good informational directionality of opportunities, as well as helping to uncover certain traits and characteristics about a subset or a group, is unlike anything that I've ever seen. And it allows me as a marketer to understand an audience group faster than I've ever been able to do it, to not just understand it, but also to then craft the messaging for it. There's so many different ways I'm using AI in a day-to-day basis to simply make the process of marketing and understanding the data of our customers so much easier. And that leads to less testing of ad spend and more refining what is working well from an ad spend perspective because we have that data.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, it'll be really interesting because I think what you're talking about, Jeff, is just scratching the surface of where we're going, because for years and years, right, it took forever to get graphics. It took forever to get good copywriting done. That stuff's all happening faster. And the next phase is ad creatives and running ad campaigns. Basically, Google and Meta have both said that they're basically going to simplify it all and let AI drive it, which is great for the marketing teams. It's bad if you're a media buyer or something like that, but that's what's coming. And I think it will probably flood the market more because it becomes easier, right? And so it's going to be interesting to see how KPIs are met and ROAS are met and that kind of stuff. Do you see it the same way?
I do. And, at the same time, and maybe it's just my naive approach, is when I think about it and I think, well, let's say 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 6 months from now, whoever, these things happen faster than I can imagine.
Right.
So, so what do I know? But, in whatever time frame, let's just say all ad copy and creatives are basically being built, managed, and optimized through AI. And on the surface, I'm like, well, that's amazing, like that, to have that capability. But at the same time, I then question, well, if AI is doing all of it, how does any one company stand out?
Yeah.
If you don't have the human element who's understanding the impact that a message has on another human's emotions, because that's what marketing is. It's psychology.
Absolutely.
So, and again, I get it. I know AI can understand psychology and the concepts or whatever it is. And I hope that it's not reading my mind at the moment, but you never know. But I do think that there is that psychological element of how do I get this brand to resonate in a way that's,
and I hope you're right that never goes away, right?
And the example I bring up is this. I am not a very good basketball player. I'm not very tall. I'm athletic. Basketball's not my sport. If I walked onto a basketball court, a pickup game with a bunch of friends, and I was wearing a t-shirt from Old Navy and a pair of Skechers, they're going to look at me and be like, who is this guy? Like, what is he doing here? But if I walked onto that basketball court and I had like the newest pair of, Jordans on, and I was, wearing Nike stuff, top to bottom, well, they still probably know they're going to beat me. At least I have this look of, all right, maybe this guy is a baller. Right. I don't know if AI can capture that in a way that we as marketers think about it, in the sense of what does wearing Nike mean for you from an emotional way, from the perception of what it is or who you are. That's very different than saying Skechers are $30, Nike Air Jordans are $180. So certain things are just, numerical and quantifiable. But then there's this other element that, again, if AI is managing all of it, how are they differentiating any of it?
Right. And we're going to have to see how this plays out, because what I'm hoping how it plays out is more kind of how you're describing, where the only thing they're doing with AI is simplifying the campaign management, but not the brand differentiation. Because you're right, because then everything looks the same, and no one would, honestly, they'll lose money, right? Because
Yeah.
If everything looks the same, nobody cares.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But I do think it's been overcomplicated in running campaigns and managing budgets and all that. So I hope that simplifies. But other than that, you're right, because it's always about human to human, right?
Yep.
And the neat part about some of the technology, the data, the automation, and the AI together is how we can drive towards personalization of one. I've always been, as a marketer, a fan of how do I talk to Jeff and Brent differently,
Yep.
right? About my brand, right? About my solution, about my service. Doesn't matter what it is. And make it much more relevant to you or to me separately. So I hope that that's where we're driving, because I think that the whole one-to-many thing was never it was just where it was the limitations of what was available.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So Jeff, tell me a little bit about kind of where you see things heading, right, for some of your startups, because I think you're going to see more startups than ever.
And that's what the beauty of this, right? Like, this is what I love about being in this space is there are so many things that founders would never have been able to do had it not been for AI, where they might have said, well, okay, I have this great idea, but in order to do it, I need 10 engineers and I need to do X, Y, and Z because all of these algorithms and all the.
Yes.
Whereas now some of that can be simplified and streamlined in a way the barrier to entry will get significantly cut down.
Yeah.
Which means great ideas will come to market, whereas previously they just may not have, due to the lack of financing and the lack of resources to build out something robust. And, I've seen that. I worked with a health tech company that is literally using AI, but really using AI.
Yeah.
To do like deep analysis of all sorts of like genetic markers and all of these different things to help detect cancers at a very, very early stage, where by doing it, they will obviously like be able to detect them or detect the potential of them, where you can go get tested, whatever it is. The idea being is their goal, nobody should ever die of cancer again. And it's a very, big goal, obviously.
Everyone can get behind that.
Everyone can get behind it. And they're not the only one. There's a lot of companies that are in this space and going after this. But one of the things that founder has told me on multiple occasions was, if it wasn't for the ability to essentially have one or two really smart people build some AI that worked for them and to create this, it would have taken $50-60 million VC money just to kind of build the
just to get the proof of concept, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's amazing.
That's what I think AI is going to do to change the strategy, or certainly the ability for these startups to come to market.
That's awesome, and that's the most exciting part, right? If you're listening to this and you take one thing away, please take away that the ideas that are the breakthrough that everybody needs, and there's lots of them, because I've had them on my podcast, and they're like, it's amazing. And so what Jeff just said is spot on. If we can get some of these amazing ideas to market faster, people will get healed faster. Their lives will be improved better, right? And there's just so many interesting solutions out there that, I before this podcast, I'd never thought of any of these. And then I've had people on where they explain their ideas, and I'm like, wow, that, things about diabetes in healthcare tech and cancer and, just unlocking things in logistics and supply chain stuff. I'm like, I didn't even know that was a problem, right? And you're right. Before, they'd have to get so much seed funding just to get to their MVP or the proof of concept. And now they're getting faster to, things like FDA approval, right? Faster. So that part's going to be really exciting. And I love that you're going to be on the front lines with a bunch of startups. So if you're listening to this and you're in startup and you got an idea, Jeff is definitely somebody you guys need to talk to. Jeff, thank you for spending time with us. I really, really enjoyed having you. I got one last question.
Sure.
If you could fix one thing in your own business with AI today that would get you to where you want to go, what would that be?
I'm gonna take a different spin. I'm gonna tell you the one thing I wish AI could do
that's good.
make it so that I spent less time on one certain area. And I'm going to tell you what it is. I wish I could deploy some sort of AI, and maybe it exists and I just don't know it yet, that would sift through every email, LinkedIn message, text message, voicemail that I get of somebody, and I could categorize it and basically say, if they're calling to sell me X, I don't ever want to see this. Because as a business owner, as somebody who is in this space, the amount of messages that I get of, do I need a virtual assistant? Do I need, someone to do my bookkeeping? Do I need and it's automated drip campaigns on LinkedIn where if I don't respond, 4 days later, it's, hey, Jeff, just bumping this back up to your inbox.
Right. Like everyone uses the same thing too. That's what's,
And it's so much noise that it takes away the ability for me, and this is where it plays into my business world. It takes away the ability for the person who, as we've been talking, who has the right message for the right audience cannot get through because there's just so much surrounding it. So if there was a way to basically say, look, I am not interested in these topics. Don't let it in any way, shape, or form cross my desk. I don't want a notification. Please make it go away. That means that those messages that may be important, that may be something that is going to really benefit me or my business, my clients, those have a greater likelihood of being seen.
Yeah, I agree. And I really hope that people realize that, email's not the only channel either. And LinkedIn, I mean, it's just crazy. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that we're going to start unlocking new channels for that reason, right?
I hope.
But we don't want it to be the same thing, just moving that over to another channel. Right. That does not help us.
And I'm not looking for it to take over, and just do something else. I just want it for me to be able to say, filter. Hey, I'm me as a person. I don't want to see X, Y, and Z. That goes away. So now the number of messages I get every day is cut by 80%. Now the last 20% have a greater likelihood of being read, not just skimmed, not just like, oh, there's so many, I'm going to completely ignore it altogether. Because some of the messages in that 20% very well may be the right message for me at the right time. And I just missed it because of the noise.
Yeah. And that definitely is very easy or very doable. It's just, I don't know anybody that's built it. I'll definitely run it by our team and see, hey, can we add that to our chief of staff agent that we have?
There you go.
That would be really cool.
That would be amazing.
Yeah. No, Jeff, thank you so much for your insights. And we're going to have to check back with you in a few months or 6 months and see how some of your startups are doing. We love to bring guests back and just find out, how things are going and how the landscape is changing. Because as you said before, it's changing so fast. You couldn't tell me. I don't even, you remember how people used to do 5-year plans?
Yeah.
I never ask anybody more than 18 months. I don't think you can predict anything out that far. And that makes it hard on leadership teams.
It does. And it also is very interesting because in fundraising, that's what's being asked. People, VCs, angel investors, they still want to see a 5-year financial model. And I often say the exact same thing, which is at this point, like, how do we know how many heads we'll need to do those jobs? We could need 10 or we could need 1. Right. Like there's just so many unknowns at this point to be thinking 5 years ahead. But again, it's the same. This is the process that they've always done. And so they want to see the 5-year projections.
Yeah. Yep. Well, you got to play the game. I mean, that's just really what it is. But they'll catch up and the rules will change. Right. And the outlooks will change and the numbers will change because, you think about the PE model and you used to have to get so much funding just to build an MVP. Now you can build an MVP in 2 weeks. Or less.
So true.
Right. Yeah. So everything's changing. So we're gonna find out. And that's why I said, love to have you back. But hey, Jeff, thank you for spending time with us. Thank you for sharing your insights. We'll get this thing live, but tell everybody how to get in touch with you. We'll put all the links below.
Yeah, sounds good. Great to be here. I will definitely come back in, a few months. Would love to keep you updated. For anybody who wants to stay in touch, you can find me at misnomer.co or on LinkedIn, either my personal page or the Misnomer marketing page as well.
Excellent. We'll have all the links below, so they'll be in the show notes. And please get in touch with Jeff and talk to him about being a fractional CMO because there's so much knowledge in seeing things from a different perspective. That's why I love your model. I encourage it all the time because when you hire someone and you work with someone that has seen it done, 6 ways from Sunday, you really cut down on on the mistakes and the learning curve, and you can go faster. And if you're a startup, you know you need to go faster. And no one has said it better that I've had on the podcast than you have, Jeff. You have to tell the story about the outcomes that the client or the ideal customer wants. And so if they do nothing more than learn that from you, they will be light years ahead of where they should be.
Exactly.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, thank you. That wraps up this episode of Future Proof, and we will see you guys tomorrow.
If you're ready to embrace change and lead with innovation, be sure to subscribe and never miss an episode. Thanks for tuning in to the Future Proof Podcast.